Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you're watching World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Amid rising tensions between Japan and China, Japanese government spokesperson Minoru Kihara has now said that China's warning against travel to Japan was incompatible with what was agreed between the two countries amid an escalated diplomatic spat over Taiwan. US President Donald Trump has hinted that he could have discussions with Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro, who has been in the crosshairs of US military buildup in the Caribbean. Ecuador has voted against hosting foreign military bases in the country in a massive countrywide referendum. The latest count saw over 90% of the ballot accounted for, with two-thirds of the population rejecting the proposal. US President Donald Trump has now backed the release of the infamous Epstein files, saying that it is a Democrat ploy to distract from their failures with the government shutdown. At least 42 Indian Umrah pilgrims, including several from Hyderabad, are feared dead after their bus collided with a diesel tanker near Mufrihat while en route from Mecca to Medina in Saudi Arabia. German Finance Minister and Vice Chancellor Lars Klingbeil are headed to China seeking dialogue in trade tensions as Berlin pushes its de-risking strategy amid Chinese curbs on rare earths and semiconductors that have shaken German industry. Japanese tourism and retail stocks have plunged after China warned its citizens against traveling to Japan, following Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi's comments involving Taiwan. As Japan relies heavily on China, Japan's top tourist source with 7.5 million visitors in the first 9 months of this year, which is 28% of all international tourist spending. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said a rare earths deal between the United States and China will hopefully be completed by Thanksgiving, following last month's framework that avoided 100% U.S. tariffs and halted China's planned export licensing regime, as Bessent expressed confidence that President Donald Trump and President Xi Jinping's agreements will hold. Now we have a breaking news from India. At least 42 Umrah pilgrims from Hyderabad, India, are feared dead after a passenger bus traveling from Mecca to Medina in Saudi Arabia collided with a diesel tanker. Reports indicate that the accident occurred around 1:30 a.m. Indian Standard Time in an area identified as Mufrihat. Reports have said that among the 43 passengers, there were around 20 women and 11 children. The pilgrims had completed their Umrah rituals in Mecca and were on their way to Medina when the tragedy occurred. Many of them were reportedly asleep at the time of the impact. Local sources have reported 42 fatalities, but officials are still verifying the exact number of the casualties. And now they are assessing the condition of the survivors. Emergency teams are currently engaged in recovery operations, and more details are awaited. According to reports, there is no official statement yet on the cause of the crash, but both of the Ministry of Hajj and Umrah and the travel agency have confirmed the accident. Now we move on to our next news. U.S. President Donald Trump has said that he now supports efforts by lawmakers to release additional files related to sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, a reversal from his earlier opposition to the measure. Writing on his Truth Social platform, Trump has urged House Republicans to vote for the release, saying the party has nothing to hide. The shift has come as Trump accuses Democrats of fueling what he calls an Epstein hoax, after emails surfaced suggesting Epstein claimed Trump knew about the girls. Some critics argue the president previously sought to block disclosure to avoid potential political damage, a claim Trump denies. The dispute has created rare fractures within the Republican Party and even among Trump's usual MAGA allies. Over the weekend, he withdrew his endorsement of Marjorie Taylor Green's 2026 re-election bid amid disagreements over this issue. Trump has also demanded that Attorney General Pam Bondi and the FBI investigate Epstein's ties to former President Bill Clinton and ex-Harvard President Larry Summers. Now for this discussion, we welcome Daniela Bloom. She's a political commentator, joins us live from Los Angeles. Thank you very much, Daniela, for joining us again. Good to see you. Daniela, what is happening with this now, and how might Trump's reversal on releasing Epstein files affect power dynamics and internal divisions within the Republican Party?
Well, this is one of the promises he ran on, and I think he really underestimated that it is still a very core issue for his base. They want the Epstein files, they want the transparency. They feel that there has not been consistency from his administration. From Trump's point of view, if there was something to be released, it would have been released. He himself has not been implicated, but this is important for his base, so he's going to show by action that he is authorizing and encouraging the House Republicans to vote to release all the files.
Daniela, what do you think, what made him change his mind now, and what do you think the timing suggests?
Pressure from his base to show transparency. And even though Trump himself says, look, to be honest, this is more hurting the Democrats than the Trump himself and the Republicans, because believe me, if they had something on Trump, they would not be holding it. They would do everything they could to have shown the public before he ran and won in a landslide. So this actually will hurt the Democrats more, and I think this is what the Republicans want to see. There are people like Bill Clinton and many other Democrat leaders who've been on that island, and no one is apparently above the law. This is a talking point from Nancy Pelosi, so a lot of the base wants to see that apply to the Democrats as well.
Right, and what are the political implications of sitting president publicly pressuring the DOJ and FBI to investigate alleged ties between political rivals and a criminal figure?
Well, I think this move shows that he's very willing to move this forward. He has given his endorsement, he has encouraged his own House Republicans. So if there is any pushback, it is not coming from him. And I think that's very important for the base and the American people to see.
And how could this escalating partisan battle over Epstein-related disclosure influence U.S.'s public trust in congressional oversight and federal law enforcement?
Well, that's a whole other discussion. It is a mess.
Yeah, right.
But I want to say something about Trump. He has always been consistent, signing executive orders to protect children, to stop child sex trafficking. He's already had successful operations rescuing children who have been sex trafficked. The numbers have been skyrocketing since the open border policy of the Biden administration. And what I would like to ask the American people is, with all of their obsession with the Epstein files and wanting accountability and wanting the right people behind jail, where is your outcry for the truly voiceless victims? Some reports over 300,000 children missing and unaccounted for since the open borders.
Right. What do you think is next on this Jeffrey Epstein case and the Trump administration taking it? And how long do you think will it take for this all to be coming forward in public?
I think Trump made the right move to show that he is not standing in any way in terms of transparency and accountability. We don't know what is next. We don't know what obstacles might be presented, probably coming from the Democrat Party. But Trump has done what he said he was going to do, and I think that will be very appeasing to a lot of his base who has been not letting this issue go from day one. But it also does undermine all of the incredible accomplishments the Trump administration has been able to achieve since January. This is a sore point, and I'm glad that Trump is just moving it forward so he can go back to focusing on much more important things.
Right. Thank you very much, Daniela, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on, U.S. President Donald Trump has suggested that future talks with Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro could be possible amid heightened tensions in the region. Trump made the comments in Florida, noting that Venezuela would like to talk and discussions may take place. Though he provided no specific details, let's listen in.
And we may be having some discussions with Maduro, and we'll see how that turns out. They would like to talk. Well, in Venezuela's case, it's about drugs, and it's also about thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that they've released into our country. And some are gang members from Tren de Aragua, some are many are drug dealers, some are murderers. So in the case of Venezuela, it's the prison population. Their almost entire prison population was released into...
Now for this, the remarks follow Washington's announcement to designate the Maduro-linked cartel de los Soles as a foreign terrorist organization, effective November 24th. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said that the cartel, along with other groups, is responsible for drug trafficking and terrorist violence in the hemisphere. The designation coincides with a U.S. military buildup in the Caribbean, including the deployment of the USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier and supporting vessels as part of an anti-smuggling campaign, dubbed Operation Southern Spear. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Daniela Bloom. She's a political commentator, joins us live from Los Angeles. Thank you very much, Daniela, for staying with us. Now, Daniela, looking at this, how might the U.S. designation of Cartel de los Soles as a foreign terrorist organization, how do you think this would shape the political conditions under which Washington is willing to negotiate with Maduro?
Well, not only is President Trump our president, he also wrote his best-selling book, The Art of the Deal. He understands that negotiations are successful when you come from a place of strength. So his giving the green light to destroy these ships right at the coast of Venezuela shows that he's not messing around. And Trump continues not to recognize Maduro as a legitimate leader, but he will negotiate whoever he needs to negotiate in order to put the U.S. interests first. And that means stopping the drug cartels, stopping individuals coming into this country who are going to bring shenanigans with them. Venezuela already has known ties with U.S. adversaries, including Hezbollah and Iran, not to mention the high crime that they bring into the country in addition to the drugs. And Trump wants Maduro to know he's not messing around. So it's no surprise that Maduro is now showing evidence of wanting to talk.
And what do you think, how might the U.S. simultaneously signaling openness to negotiations while escalating military pressure reshape Maduro's strategic calculus towards if there was any talk to take place?
Yes, with actors like Maduro, along with Kim Jong-un and a lot of other dictator-like leadership, what works is not diplomacy, it's deterrence. Trump is showing peace through deterrence, and he's almost forcing Maduro to come to the table because he's not messing around. He's not, unlike previous administrations, he's not going to wait for a problem and then act. He's going to be proactive, and that's exactly what he's doing.
Do you think there could be, to what extent does labeling the Cartel de los Soles as a foreign terrorist organization, do you think this could affect or limit diplomatic flexibility for both Washington and Caracas in any future talks?
I do trust Trump's intuition. If he has enough evidence to call them drug cartels, and that is certainly what they are. We've seen many terrorist activity being shoved under the rug in the name of NGOs, in the name of PC movements. I mean, we have CARE in the United States, for example, which is a known supporter of active terrorism in foreign countries against the U.S. So I'm sure Trump has all the evidence he needs to use those labels.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Daniela Bloom for joining us today as a political commentator all the way from LA. Thank you very much. Now we move on. President Donald Trump has now stated that Republicans are moving forward with legislation that would impose sweeping sanctions on any country doing business with Russia. And he suggested Iran could soon be added to the list. Speaking with reporters, Trump said nations engaging economically with Moscow will be very severely sanctioned, adding that Iran may also face new penalties under the plan. The comments come as several U.S. senators renew efforts to advance a long-stalled bipartisan sanctions bill. The proposed legislation would levy tariffs on countries that purchase Russian oil and gas, and would also target international companies operating within Russia's energy sector. Lawmakers say the goal is to increase pressure on Moscow while signaling to global firms that any support for Russia's energy industry will carry significant financial costs. The renewed push sets up a major foreign policy debate on Capitol Hill in the coming days. Let's listen into what the U.S. president has shared.
Well, I hear they're doing that, and that's okay with me. They're passing legislation, or the Republicans are putting in legislation that very tough. It's sanctioning, et cetera, on any country doing business with Russia. They may add Iran to that, as you know. I suggested it. So any country that does business with Russia will be very severely sanctioned. We may add Iran to the formula.
Now we move on to South America. Ecuadorian voters have roundly rejected the return of U.S. military bases to the country in a referendum, a major political blow to Trump-friendly President Daniel Noboa. The rejection effectively blocks the U.S. military from returning to an airbase at Manta on the Pacific coast, once a hub for Washington's anti-drug operations. A separate proposal to convene an assembly to rewrite the Constitution had more than 61% rejection, with nearly 88% of votes counted. The losses on the measures are a blow to President Daniel Noboa, who had backed both. Noboa says foreign cooperation, including shared or foreign bases within the country, is central to fighting organized crime, and that the current constitution drafted under former leftist president Rafael Correa must be revised to reflect the country's new reality. Meanwhile, Ecuador's opposition has celebrated the government's referendum defeat. Let's in fact listen into what leftist presidential candidate Luisa González has shared.
Ha triunfado la patria. Significa que este país vence el odio, que se une por decirle a quien nos gobierna desde su bolsillo: con Ecuador no juegas, con los derechos de los ecuatorianos no juegas. Aquí hay un pueblo digno que hoy día te dice no a tus mentiras, a tu corrupción.
Now for this discussion, we welcome Shruti Das Gupta. She's an international affairs expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Shruti, for joining us again. Good to see you. Shruti, as we know, U.S. holds a lot of bases in many countries across the globe, but what motive could U.S. have on about this one in Ecuador, and how does this overwhelming rejection of U.S. military base in Ecuador by the public reflects public's attitude towards U.S. influence in security policy?
Apart from what U.S. wants to achieve by placing its military military in Ecuador on its beaches, is that until 2009 they did have a base. From 1999 to 2008-9 they had a base in Ecuador, and the soldiers there had immunity to their actions, and the local populace was very unhappy. There was large amount of flesh trade occurring in that region. There was a large amount of abuse and intolerance towards the local people, and that's why they feel that they had made constitutional amendments in 2008 which allowed them to reject the US military bases there, and the US had to go back. Now if Noboa wants these bases to come back, the people are insecure again because they don't really like the US military, because they feel they are not kind to the people that they are claiming to help by preparing those bases. So the locals are not happy about any foreign base on their land because they have not been treated well in the past, and they have rejected it earlier also, and they have rejected it now also. So they do not want it. They feel it is a loss of sovereignty. There were other 3 questions also as part of the referendum that was passed, and all of them got defeated. About 14 million or so were participating, and 90% of them have rejected, no, 2/3 of them rejected Noboa's changes that he was projecting. So it is a hard blow for him because despite since 2023 that he has been the president, he has had many number of emergencies. He has deployed army on the streets in critical zones to counter the Ecuadorian drug problem. But despite that, just this year there were 4,000 deaths related to the rampant crime and the drug cartels and all the other local issues of Ecuador. So they don't feel inviting USA to their shores would be of any particular use to Ecuador. It would be of use to USA, who has been doing their operations against drug cartels, and they would find a lot of fun shooting down boats. But the last time, apart from the flesh trade and the general abuse, they were also shooting down fishing boats. So the local economy was also suffering. So people don't really like USA, at least not Ecuadorian. Despite what USA promises, it is going to benefit Ecuador. And Noboa is now a good friend of Trump, and he is not looked at very positively because of what he has been asking his public to pass.
Right. So you're mentioning that Noboa is not a very popular leader in Ecuador, and what political consequences might President Noboa face after voters rejected both the military base proposal and his push for a constitutional rewrite?
Well, he might have a very difficult time getting re-elected. He already is unable to, though he's tried very hard, and I have to appreciate any leader who attempts to kind of counter the kind of menace drug cartels cause. Ecuador passes 90% of the drugs manufactured in Colombia and Peru, and he's fighting this giant menace all by himself and his small amount of security apparatus, and that's a difficult job. So despite that, he has still not been able to elevate the poverty, improve the health sector, improve the education sector. He's not been able to stem the crime. He's declared emergency a number of times. So for the people, it feels like this man, although has the good intentions, is still unable to find a way to control it. And now he seeks external influence in internal politics to help him stay in power and kind of project power through the US military base. So people will be very skeptical of Noboa and his party and their attempt to invite USA back to their shores. He might face very, very strong opposition in the coming elections, whenever they be.
And how do you think, how might this, to what extent does the referendum outcome constrain Ecuador's ability to pursue external security partnerships in, like you mentioned, there's a lot of organized crime there, and how might this limitation reshape their regional security cooperation?
Well, they need help definitely, but it is not going to be through military bases of foreign governments on their land. They can share intel, they can have set up agencies that can ensure that crimes can be better countered. But constitutional amendment has been rejected. That was one of the major things that was part of the referendum. So the crime part of it cannot be, he feels, Noboa feels, cannot be addressed through the current criminal justice system, and he wants an upgrade on that. While people think that it might hamper the democracy of the nation if he continues to keep meddling with the constitution. And they've amended the constitution, I think, 3 times already. They've tried to find a middle path while ensuring that the people are safe, kind of root out their drug issues, but it hasn't come to fruition. So I think they need to look as a community also inside, where they are able to protect their whistleblowers and their other people, rather than look outwards towards an external force coming and helping them sink the boats of the operating cartels. They need inter-agency cooperation, they need better training, they need a larger amount of force controlling these internal issues rather than cooperation with America or any other, because no matter what happens, the American base on the shores of Ecuador will be targeting the Pacific Sea, and the menace continues to stay on land. This will not help Noboa and his plans to curb the drug menace in Ecuador. So there are a larger range of issues that he needs to address, including on how he deals with the drug cartels and their demise in his way.
And also going back to our previous question, do you think U.S. would or could push their way in, like U.S. is pressuring Afghanistan about the Bagram air base through Pakistan? Do you think this similar thing could be seen, as you know, especially current administration pushes towards what they want, no matter the diplomacy? They sometimes ignore the diplomacy part.
So there's already the southern sphere bit, right, where they are operating on international seas and waters and taking down boats on mere suspicion and only US intelligence. There is no supportive, credible reports. There are no evidences that are put forth towards the world community. So they might continue to do just that. They might not make a base there, but they might work in the international waters of Ecuador and take down these boats. Whether these boats were proven to be part of the drug operations, or whether they are just fishing boats, or just on the suspicion, just on one man's or two man's word, they're able to continue this. They've done it for Venezuela, they're doing it in the Caribbean, they're doing it in the Pacific, and I wish to God somebody asked them for proof, or somebody threatened sanctions on USA to tell them that they cannot operate like this to control a menace of drugs. They are not looking inwards. At least in Ecuador, Noboa has tried, even though he has failed to a large extent, even though he has failed, he has tried to stop the problem inside rather than go and attack Colombia and Peru for having drug cartels that smuggle their goods via Ecuador towards USA. So at least he has tried to look at the problem inside his own house. USA is not doing that. They are not looking at what is making sure that these particular boats have a safe landing space on US shores. They are not looking at their own drug menace. They are not looking at their own mafia. Yes. They are only sinking ships, and that is never a good signal for any nation worldwide.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Shruti Das Gupta, for sharing that insight as an international affairs expert. Always great learning from you. Now we move on and we stay in the region. Chile is set for a presidential runoff after far-right candidate Jose Antonio Cast and leftist former Labor Minister Jeanette Jara emerged as the top two contenders in first-round vote. With over 70% of ballots counted, Cast has secured roughly 24% of the vote, campaigning on hardline promises to crack down on crime and immigration. Jara, representing an 8-party leftist coalition, received 26.7% of the vote, slightly ahead of Cast, according to Chile's Electoral Service survey, which reported 82.97% of results counted. The two candidates will now face each other in a head-to-head contest to determine Chile's next president. Let's listen into what the two leaders have shared.
Es el Chile que nos entrega a nosotros una tremenda responsabilidad, que tenemos que asumirla con convicción, con valentía y con coraje. Y la elección del 14 de diciembre no es cualquier elección. Será la elección más importante de nuestra generación. Será un verdadero plebiscito entre dos modelos de sociedad.
Lamento que en los 16 años que Cast estuvo como diputado, nadie recuerde una sola ley o un solo acuerdo que haya sacado por el bien del país. Esa es la realidad, esa es la realidad. Y me voy a encargar de que la realidad, la claridad y las diferencias entre lo que significa que los destinos de Chile los dirija la ultraderecha versus el progresismo en nuestro país, que ha sido quien ha logrado avanzar en derechos sociales, políticos, económicos,